Coming in at number 10, we have Saturn's screaming poles. These sound well and truly spine-chilling. These sounds rival anything a space horror composer could score, and these are natural sounds from Saturn's poles. These were recorded by NASA's Cassini spacecraft in 2002, and they're radio waves that come from Saturn's aurora, so very similar to the light phenomenon at our aurora borealis on Earth. So imagine the swirling green, pinks and yellow lights accompanying these sounds, which have been sped up with a slight frequency adjust so our human ears can hear them. This sound comes from one of my favourite YouTube channels, Space Audio. They were uploaded in March 2015. Now Cassini completed its space mission in 2017, losing contact as it made a suicide dive into the planet's atmosphere on September 15th. Coming in at number 9, we have Earth's hiss. Wait, the Earth hissed as a spacecraft flew by? Yeah, it did. The recording sounds like a huge breathing dragon. Have a listen. How is that anything other than the rise and fall of breath? It kind of sounds like Darth Vader. Apparently this is sound recorded in 1996 from NASA's polar mission. It's a sound of hot ionized particles generated by sunlight crashing into the atmosphere. It creates a sound like the Earth hissing at us, and to be honest, what with climate change and the rising greenhouse gases, I can understand why the Earth may be pissed enough to hiss. This isn't the first hiss heard from planet Earth by the patient ears of NASA. In 2015, a NASA student balloon experiment using infrared microphones picked up the unsettling sounds from 22 miles above the Earth's surface in New Mexico and Arizona. Coming in at number 8, we have music from the dark side of the moon. It was nothing compared to Pink Floyd. It was kind of a medium-pitched wooing isn't everyone's kind of music, but you know what? Each to their own. The astronauts on the Apollo 10 mission passed around the moon, and when they were the farthest side away from Earth, the dark side, they lost all radio contact with ground control and the rest of us Earthlings. As Apollo careered around the moon, they heard some very weird sounds, like really weird sounds. So weird that the astronauts talked about it constantly. The weird sounds were not reported at the time, but they were recorded and received by NASA when the mission returned to Earth. The recordings were then classified, which means that they were being safeguarded from human ears. Why? We're not sure. In 2008, the newly declassified recordings were found, and we can hear the weird woo noises for ourselves. Have a listen.
That music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? You hear that? That whistling sound? Yeah.
The astronauts are talking about it constantly, and NASA hasn't really returned to the moon since the 70s, and I'm wondering, you know what? Is it because of these weird noises? Conspiracy. Coming in at number 7, we have the mysterious radio signals from deep space. For the last decade, scientists have been picking up unexplained radio signals they call fast radio bursts from deep space. In fact, on the day I scripted this video, August 7th, 2018, more signals were reported. Now these signals have ranged in frequency, but the most recent are 580 MHz, that's 200 lower than previously heard. The latest sounds detected come from very far away, possibly billions of light years away. Now the radio signals you're about to hear aren't the most recent, but they are pretty unsettling, especially when the thudding kicks in. Just listen. Okay, and then there's some more. It sounds like maybe the plucking of a string, maybe? Currently, scientists don't know where exactly the sounds are coming from, but they are trying to pinpoint them. Coming into number 6, we have Jupiter's crying lightning. The official term for Jupiter's dissonant space whirs is Jovian whistles. These are descending and ascending sounds created by lightning strikes in the atmosphere. As you may know, Jupiter is a decidedly stormy planet, with its red eye being a giant storm that has raged non-stop for over 350 years. Jupiter Jupiter, you stormy old babe. But I mean, let's have a listen to these terrifying shrieks. There's kind of like a shwam, shwam sound, and it kind of sounds like something being launched, like shoo, shoo. What is this about? It's the weirdest lightning I've honestly ever heard. I don't think you can actually hear lightning on Earth. Maybe. This sound was recorded by Jupiter's Voyager in the 70s, so they're around 40 years old. Now the planet is likely still screaming in its stormy areas and has been for hundreds of years. Can you even imagine? Coming into number 5, we have Ganymede's ghoulish shrieks. Honestly, I feel like Jupiter's moon Ganymede is trying hard to tell us something here. One of Jupiter's 16 moons, Ganymede, is officially the biggest moon in our solar system with a radius of 2,634 kilometers. This makes her bigger than both Mercury and Pluto, and 2/3 the size of Mars. Hey there, big moon, what you doing? This big moon has its own magnetosphere, which creates some big noises, and they're pretty unsettling. Their sounds were recorded in 1996 by the Galileo spacecraft. The initial approach into the magnosphere is punctuated by strong bursts of noises. Then comes some stranger computer beeping like sounds. Have a little listen. Right? Then through the beeps comes windy sounding whirs, then the whole thing crescendos with beeps interspersed with what sounds like alien cries. Tell me what you think. Terrifying, right? Coming into number 4, we have the screams of a dying star. So it turns out that stars have feelings too, and why shouldn't they? They're much bigger than us, and we're actually kind of like teeny weeny blips, like atoms compared to a star, or even smaller. In 2012, scientists at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center released an artist's impression of a black hole swallowing a screaming star. The real-life star was spotted falling into a huge black hole 3.9 billion light years away in the constellation of Draco. It seems as the stars get sucked in, they release blips of light every 200 seconds, which NASA thinks are like screams. As the star is so far away, we haven't got an actual sound recording that the star made. Scientists say that the frequency of the light, if converted to the sound, would sound like a very low D sharp. NASA buffs can predict what this sound is like based on the oscillations that have been observed by smaller matter falling into smaller black holes in our galaxy, the Milky Way. Coming into number 3, we have a creepy singing comet. In 2014, scientists recorded a strange whirring, almost alien-like sounding noises. The clicking, vibrating sounds get even higher in frequency and sound very much like I would imagine an alien trying to communicate with us sounds. The Rosetta orbiter picked up the sounds from the 67P CG comet in August 2014. Have a little listen. So I don't know what is going on, but neither does head researcher Karl-Heinz Gleismeister, whose team was baffled by the noise. The European Space Agency think that the sounds must be coming as a result of a process of oscillation from the comet in orbit. I'm still so confused as to why scientists always give space objects such sterile names like 67P CG. You really missed a trick here. Anyway, what do you make to these sounds and the singing comet? Coming in at number 2, we have the heartbeat of a black hole. So this is a thing apparently, and actually I'm terrified. I thought that black holes were where things went to die, but it turns out that they may have a little soul going on in there. While we can't directly see or hear what black holes are like, we can see and hear what they do to their environment. In 2008, an MIT professor, Edward Morgan, translated X-ray data from the star system GRS 1915-105. He then turned it into sound. Now the binary star system is a black hole and a star that feeds into it, and this is what it sounds like. So, kind of like a heartbeat. The beating of a deep, dark, all-consuming black heart. How romantic and seriously twisted. Okay, finally, I am pretty sure that listening to this will actually send you mad, like bonkers never be the same again mad. I was listening to this with earphones while researching this video, and I had to take them off because it sounded like there was a drill going through my brain.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Marsquake. Picked up by NASA's InSight, the robot on Mars, on April 6, 2019. In this specific recording, 3 sounds can be heard. The first 2 are suspected to be be wind on Mars and a Mars version of an earthquake, and then there's sound from the robot at the end. This is wild to hear and definitely makes you wonder how often the Marsquakes happen. Hopefully not too often, because if we plan on moving to Mars someday, all the high maintenance humans will not be okay with that. Okay, fine, myself included. Okay, on a serious note, the sound is pretty intense. Have a listen. In our number 9 spot, we have a Saturn thunderstorm. Apparently, ever since the Voyager flew past Saturn, scientists have taken note of potential lightning deep within Saturn. The sound that is captured here, to me, it sounds like the intense bubbling of water in a pot, or perhaps the crazy static in between radio frequencies. It's hard to imagine a world like Saturn that may have such intense lightning storms. Imagine Saturn is a world where it always rains. And if so, then I have to say that Saturn is probably where hell is. It is believed that the word Saturn is related to Satan, so it works. Take a listen to hear these staticky crackles that are believed to be sounds from a lightning storm. In our number 8 spot, we have Saturn's radio emissions. Another recording from Saturn, and where this one came from, is super interesting. In December 2016, NASA's Cassini spacecraft crossed the plains of Saturn and took a number of recordings of the planet. This one in particular literally sounds like the opening to the English dubbed 90s version of Sailor Moon. My fave version of Sailor Moon. Even though that is an unpopular opinion, it's how I got introduced to the show, okay? So it'll always hold a special place in my heart. Anyways, this sound is creepy, and it is the sound of the radio emissions leaving Saturn. Take a listen. In our number 7 spot, we have Jupiter's bow shock. This is a sound that was recorded by the Voyager spacecraft as it was passing through the region of Jupiter. It is said that the sun emits a type of solar wind, which can be repelled by a strong magnetic force such as that of a planet. It is deflected, and the energy is apparently converted into thermal energy. This is known as a bow shock, and what you are about to hear is the sound of a bow shock. The sound reminds me of what I can imagine as an instant catastrophic tornado. Have a listen and let me know if you agree in the comment section below. In our number 6 spot, we have Jupiter's moon. Jupiter's moon, also known as Ganymede, apparently makes some pretty strange sounds, and I'm pumped to share it with you all. NASA's Galileo spacecraft robot studied Jupiter and its surrounding area, and it picked up on some plasma wave observations, and this confirmed that the moon has its own magnetosphere. These sounds are quite spooky and remind me of the sounds that you can imagine some alien communication device to make. It feels straight out of a movie. Because maybe it is. Psych! This isn't real, and no one actually ever went to the moon. Dun dun dun. Just joking. These are the spooky sounds that Galileo picked up. In our number 5 spot, we have the Earth's whisper. I'm sorry, Melissa, did you just say the Earth's whisper? You're going to show us a sound of the Earth talking very quietly? Yes, in a matter of speaking. Literally. Somebody save me from myself. Okay, so NASA recorded the Earth making some pretty crazy noises, and apparently the noise was coming from charged particles emanating from the Earth. It honestly sounds like birds calling to each other on a hot summer day, or what I imagine the rainforest to sound like. But anyways, it's pretty cool to listen to, so take a listen. In our number 4 spot, we have Callisto. Callisto is another Jupiter moon that we've recorded some audio of. This recording sounds an awful lot like Callisto is filled with C-3POs from Star Wars, as that's the only way I can describe this sound. It's very, robotic, and at the same time, it sounds like it's heavily burning something, but I'm not sure if that's just the recording device or part of the sound. Apparently, Callisto has the weakest interaction with Jupiter's magnetosphere of any of the 4 largest moons. Take a listen and let us know your thoughts. 3 spot, we have the sounds of Jupiter. The sounds of Jupiter are intense. It sounds like crystals dropping mixed with the sound that you hear in movies when things are going back in time. It could also seem like small mice making these sounds too. It's pretty extraordinary and quite different from a lot of these other videos. It's interesting how consistent the sound is also. Apparently NASA's Cassini spacecraft captured this sound when stopping by Jupiter for a gravitational boost while on its way to its next destination. Have a listen. Coming up at our number 2 spot, we have the sun's vibrations. I couldn't decide if this should be number 1 or 2 on the list because it's just as cool as number 1. Maybe better, that's debatable. What you're about to hear is actual recorded sound from the sun. Whoa! The vibrations in this video may appear to be low, but what's interesting about the vibrations is that they appear to be positive. It feels good to listen to its hum, like it has a warmth to it that will lift up your spirits if you continue to listen, which honestly makes sense. I don't know why, but it does. Anyways, listen to the sounds of the sun and let me know if you feel and understand what I'm talking about. In our number 1 spot, we have the black hole. Okay, I had to put this one in first because the concept of the black hole is just mind-blowing to me. A black hole is essentially a region of space-time where gravity is so strong that nothing, no particles or even electromagnetic radiation such as light, can escape from it. People believe that beyond a black hole are other dimensions and universes. It's a thing of fascination for many, and so of course when I came across this sound bit, I had to include it in this video. This is a sound bit that shows the force of a black hole and how terrifying it might be to get close to one. Not that we ever would, unless of course we build a spacecraft in our lifetime that gets us close to it, but unless that happens, the likelihood is slim. Anyways, it sounds like what I imagine ghosts or ghouls sound like when they're moaning. Take a listen.
At number 10 now, the sound of a black hole. Edward Morgan from MIT collected X-ray data on a distant black hole, then transmitted it into a sound that is audible to humans. The original of this is about 1,000,000 billion times deeper than anything you could ever hear, the deepest note in the universe in fact. But with a little bit of tweaking, here is a sound of an actual black hole, and it's terrifying. Coming out at number 9, we have the lost cosmonaut. In 1961, 2 Italian brothers recorded a signal from space which they claimed was from a secret Soviet space mission. It sounded like a female cosmonaut who was in distress while trying to orbit the Earth. Something had apparently gone wrong. She was complaining of feeling hot as she burned up in the atmosphere. Now the Russians announced that an unmanned craft had burned up in the atmosphere and denied they had any knowledge of the lost cosmonaut. At the number 8 spot now, we have Tabby's star. This mysterious star was discovered by amateur astronomers and found to be about 1,400 light years from Earth. The strange thing was, the brightness of it would dip by 22% for days at a time. Some suggested it was a Dyson sphere, a theoretical alien structure that would enclose a whole star to harvest all of its power. For many years it's been just a sci-fi idea, but Tabby's star seemed to fit this theory very well. At the time of recording, scientists are still carrying out further studies. Coming in at number 7 now, we have 234 stars. In 2016, Canadian astronomers found something very strange within the Milky Way. 234 stars that were blinking at exactly the same rate. Eric Trottier, the astronomer who found this, proposed that the signal was just too much of a coincidence. He thought it was of alien origin. He said that the pulsating signals were caused by an alien civilization flashing a laser in our direction, causing a faint but detectable blip in their star's light. The stars could even be 234 different civilizations pulling together to try and contact us. Moving on to number 6 now, we have the sound of Saturn. In 2002, the Cassini spacecraft passed by the gas giant of Saturn. It listened to the planet's aurora caused by its huge magnetic field. The signal was way out of human hearing, so they slowed it right down, they compressed it, and this is what they heard. moving on to number 5 now, we have the Lorimer burst. This signal was detected in 2007 after astronomers dug through 6 years of previous data. Then they found it. It was a very brief burst of radio emission, just 5 milliseconds in total. The area it came from was 5 to 11 billion light years away from Earth. This means that when a signal left its origin, Earth hadn't even been formed yet, which is mind-blowing. Scientists were shocked to find that whatever made this signal released more energy in that short burst than the sun does in 4 months. Moving on to number 4 now, we have this. It's a very weird name, but it has an incredible story behind it. Scientists detected this signal from an empty area of space with no stars or planet systems near it for about 1,000 light years, from an area between the constellations of Pisces and Aries, and yet a signal came. It was detected as being a short burst at about 1420 megahertz. That's one of the main frequencies at which hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, absorbs and emits energy. Scientists have often thought of using this to contact any aliens out there, and so when we received it, it's drawn a lot of attention. Coming in at number 3 now, we have frequency 4462.3. This signal came from a star only 100 light years from us, and it was a star quite similar to our own. It's called TYC 1220911, and it was nothing out of the ordinary until it did something. The noise it made was just 10 seconds long, but now that it's been adjusted so we can hear it, it's very scary and creepy. Tell me what you think of it. At number 2, we have the cosmic roar. In 2006, a group of California astronomers were trying to detect the very first stars in the universe. Instead, they heard a radio wave roar. What they heard was 6 times louder than the faint signal they expected to detect. In fact, this roar was 6 times greater than the combined emission of all known radio wave sources. And this wasn't the sound of the Big Bang, it was the sound of something mysterious from the start of the universe, something more intense than we've ever encountered. And finally now at number 1, we have the wow signal. What else could it be, really? In 1977, Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope detected the strangest signal ever heard from space. It came from the Sagittarius constellation, and many scientists thought that it sounded like it could be of extraterrestrial origin. It lasted for 72 seconds, and then it was never heard of again. The astronomer who found the signal was so shocked by it that they wrote "wow" in the margin, giving us its name. Now it's been adjusted like some of the other ones so that we can hear it, and this is what it sounds like.
Starting off this countdown, we have the alien signal. Back in 2016, we received a signal from a nearby star, and some people believe that it was sent by aliens. So the star is in the constellation Hercules. It's about 95 light years away, which seems far, because it is, but it's relatively close according to the universe's scale. Anyways, this star is said to have at least 1 planet, and it's roughly the size of Neptune, and it's thought to have the right conditions to support life. So could this planet have life on it? Who knows? But let's talk about this signal. It was so strong that they believed it came from a Kardashev Type 2 civilization. A Type 1 civilization can use and store energy from a nearby star like us, whereas Type 2 can harness the energy from the entire star, meaning it makes that planet more advanced. So it may just be that the signal was sent from extremely advanced life forms. Moving on to number 9, we have the wow signal. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then smash that like button because it really helps us out. Also, don't know what that was, but hit the like button for me, thanks. On the night of August 15th, 1977, an Ohio State University radio telescope received a quite fascinating signal. The signal lasted 72 seconds and it was intense. More intense than anything in the sky that night. Now the signal did not repeat, and over the years people have tried to find it again, but all attempts have failed. It was like a one-off. The signal is said to have come from deep space, in an area that is relatively free of noise from other objects. Now it was given the name the wow signal because when reviewing the data, Jerry Amen was so shocked by it that he wrote "wow" next to it. Still to this day we have no clue what caused the signal, but it was pretty significant. Wow. Owen Wilson, wow. Moving on to number 8, we have the Soyuz 11. On June 6, 1971, 3 Soviet cosmonauts launched into space. Their goal was to make a record for the longest time spent in space. Sadly, the mission failed and they became the first people to die in space. While in space, their breathing ventilation valve ruptured. All 3 sadly died from decompression. The last message they sent to Earth was them trying to scream for help, but they couldn't, so all they heard was them gasping for air and then weird popping sounds, which is from the air in their lungs expanding from the drop in air pressure and being exposed to the vacuum of space. The worst part? The spacecraft survived re-entry into Earth and landed perfectly, but when the hatch was open, they found the dead crew inside, their faces filled with dark blue splotches and blood dripping from their ears and noses. Moving on at number 7, we have the 13 signals. Back in 2019, the Chime Observatory in British Columbia, Canada picked up a very strange signal. They observed 13 of the same signals. These are what they call FRBs, or fast radio bursts. You're probably like, psh, okay, what's the big deal? Well, all of the 13 bursts came from the same location and they were 1.5 billion light years from Earth. And detecting that is super uncommon. It's only been seen once before. So 13 at the same location and time, that's suspicious. A number of people think that it was someone or something signaling for help. Could it be life on another planet? Aliens? Who knows? In our 6th spot today, we have the pattern. This next signal is pretty terrifying, and that's because it appears like clockwork. So basically, the signal will chime for 4 days, then after the 4th day, it stops making that weird noise. It stops for 12 days before picking up again and doing the same thing over and over again. It's thought that maybe on the days where it's not sending a signal towards us, it's actually sending a signal in another direction. Some believe that this is coming from aliens or other life forms, whereas others think that it's a star sending out radio waves and then orbiting by something that could be blocking the signal for 12 days and then returning to a position where we can hear it. It's just incredibly mysterious and we don't know what to make of it. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the mysterious flashes, another very strange and mysterious signal that we have yet to figure out. So astronomers have detected a signal that will beam to Earth for 90 days before being silent for 67 days. They noticed that this pattern would repeat every 157 days. Its cycle is that precise. The signal is being sent from a distant galaxy and this pattern has been happening since 2016. Furthermore, the signal is quite strong. It unleashes as much energy as our sun does in a century in just a few milliseconds. Like, what the actual hell is going on? Theory goes that aliens have created a powerful machine that has the capability of sending out this strong signal, but then it needs 157 days to recharge itself before continuing on. But who knows? In our 4th spot today, we have the eerie sounds. This is quite possibly one of the creepiest things I have ever heard. So NASA decided to gather all of the creepy sounds that they have ever heard and put it all together on SoundCloud for us to enjoy. It literally sounds like aliens communicating with each other or something like that. NASA refers to these sounds as moans and whistles from the universe. Isn't that just great? Moving on to number 3, we have the pulse of radio waves. Just recently on April 28, 2020, 2 telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves. Now the signal only lasted for a millisecond, but astronomers were blown away by this and said it's a major discovery. Why? Well, this is the first time a fast radio burst has ever been detected so close to Earth. The signal came from the Milky Way. In fact, Chime wasn't even looking for it, but it was so loud and clear that they caught it anyways. They said that this burst is helping them discover what these things are and where they're coming from. Maybe we'll find out if there's aliens out there sooner than we thought. Moving on to number 2, we have the lost cosmonaut. A lot of people refer to this next story as an urban legend, but with the facts I'm about to provide you with, it might just change your mind. So legend goes that back in the 1950s to 60s, 2 brothers were working as amateur radio operators. One day they were listening in on space when they heard what sounded like a cosmonaut returning to Earth's orbit. They managed to record her final moments. Her spacecraft was malfunctioning, and in the recording the woman speaking in Russian is pleading for help, saying it's getting hot, because the craft was burning up. Turns out that her spacecraft caught on fire and she was frantically sending messages hoping someone would hear it and somehow help her. But the Soviet Union just sent her up there and left her to die. Now the Soviets denied this, saying that it was an unmanned craft that burned. But the thing is, a lot of cosmonauts died during the space race, and they refused to reveal a number of those deaths. Half the time they would just cover them up. So this recording could be real. And in our number 1 spot today we have the final words. In 1967, Soviet test pilot, aerospace engineer, and cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov was sent into space on the Soyuz 1. However, the mission did not go according to plan and the spacecraft was extremely faulty. But Vladimir didn't really have a say in going on this mission. He kind of felt forced to do so. He said that if he didn't go, then the backup pilot would have had to go, which was his best friend, and he said he didn't want to do that to his friend, so he went and sacrificed his life instead. He knew the mission was going to fail, and he was right. Once he began to orbit Earth, a number of issues began to happen, such as the antennas not opening up properly. The worst came to him on his re-entry into Earth. On April 24th, 1967, during his re-entry, the parachutes failed to open. The signals he sent to Earth were haunting. On his way down, translators heard him say heat was rising in the capsule. He then began to curse the people who put him inside of this botched spaceship, saying they killed him. His final moments were him cursing and crying in rage. Imagine hearing that and listening to a man's final words. It's very haunting. Starting off this countdown, we have Jupiter's ionosphere. This eerie recording was recorded by NASA's Juno spacecraft in February of 2017. This is the sound of the plasma waves in Jupiter's ionosphere. And let me tell you, it's eerie. It starts off as just like a plain, almost static sound. Then it picks up and sounds like roars. Now that's not even that bad, I will admit. The freakiest part though is when it captured what sounded like someone moaning or groaning in pain. Listen carefully. It happened pretty fast, but you can hear like a sound. That same low grunt happened several other times throughout the recording, and they don't know what it's from. Obviously NASA is like, oh, it's just the natural sounds of Jupiter, but everyone else is like, aliens! In our 9th spot today we have the knocking sound. Back in 2003, astronaut Yang Liwei became China's first man in space. In 2016, Yang revealed during interviews how terrified he actually was up in space by himself. In fact, he told his creepy story of the unknown knocking sound he heard. So basically he claims that he heard, and I quote, someone knocking the body of the spaceship just as knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. It neither came from outside nor inside the spaceship. He looked outside of the porthole but never saw anything tapping on the spaceship. Since his return to Earth, they still haven't figured out what caused this sound. They even tried to recreate the sound and scenario, but all attempts failed. The only theory is that it happened as a result of the expansion or contraction of the spaceship, or ghost aliens messing with us. In our 8th spot today we have the Roswell Rock. This is an object that is believed to have been from space. I mean, we get pieces of meteorites all the time, so this space rock shouldn't be unusual, right? Wrong. This rock is unusually smooth and uniform in color. It's just way too perfect. On top of it, the rock has a design protruding from the surface of it. Now, it was given the name the Roswell Rock because it was found in Roswell, New Mexico, which has had its fair share in alien UFO sightings. So it might have been left by some ETs or something. Upon analyzing the rock, researchers have realized that the rock's design actually matches a crop circle that was found in England in 1996, which makes this whole thing that much weirder. Some are convinced that this rock is some message sent by aliens. Not only that, but the rock has some weird magnetic properties to it. It's unlike anything they have ever seen before. Linda Moulton, along with other researchers, believe that it's some message sent from aliens or someone or something in space. As for what it means, one theory is that the rock contains a date for some event that has or will happen. Moving on at number 7, we have Europa. Europa, otherwise known as Jupiter 2, is the smallest of the 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. Back in 2017, when the Galileo spacecraft flew by the moon, it picked up some weird signals. Kinda creepy and alien-like, not gonna lie. But wait until you hear the screams it picked up. Yes, you heard me correctly, it picked up something that sounds like screams. NASA claims it's just the sounds of the plasma waves interacting with Earth's magnetic fields that somehow created a strange whistling noise that sounds like an alien screaming. Or it could just be an alien screaming. Coming in at number 6, we have the Voyager plasma sounds. That's one way to hurt your eardrums. This sound was recorded by Voyager 2 as it passed by the outer magnetosphere in 1979. This is the sound created, and I quote, "at a special frequency in the plasma with a magnetic field. The frequency is set by the number of electrons in a given volume and the strength of the magnetic field." That's what NASA had to say about it. Now the last couple of seconds sound almost like birds singing in the morning, but as we all know, there are no birds in space. Unless, are there alien birds? We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Dropa Discs. Hands down, this object came from space and is a message sent by aliens. So in 1938, an archaeologist led an expedition near the Bayanhar Mountains in China. While there, they came across some ancient caves that had these weird discs buried in there. These discs were over 10,000 years old and resembled phonograph records. So they were like, wait a minute, what if it is a record and holds some kind of message? So then they were placed on this like special turntable, and the discs would vibrate / hum in a weird rhythm as if an electric charge was passing through them. To make things weirder, the discs had images carved into them. The drawings told a story about a spaceship that crashed into the mountains. Coincidence? I think not. So theory goes that these records contained some sort of message from aliens that we have yet to solve. Moving on to number 4, we have the Hubble. When I say that this is the scariest space recording I have ever listened to, this is the scariest space recording I have ever listened to. So that was recorded by the NASA Hubble Space Telescope. It's the sounds from the Helix Nebula, which is 655 light years away. Now space has no sounds, and clearly these audio recordings dispute that, but no, what they did is use sonification to figure out what it would sound like if it did produce sounds. And then this clip went viral on Twitter because it sounds like a scary woman screaming. At first, I thought it sounded like that damn ghost from Scooby-Doo. You know, hey!
Get out of here!
But then you hear hear that scream, and that's enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Moving on at number 3, we have the unexplained music. So back in 1969, during the Apollo 10 space mission, the astronauts on board the shuttle claimed to have heard eerie music as they circled the moon. It happened when the astronauts were on the far side of the moon and lost radio and visual contact with mission control. They were alone for about an hour, just traveling along listening to this spooky music, which today still hasn't been solved. The astronauts described it as unusual whistling noises or space music. In fact, the astronauts debated telling mission control about it. They feared they wouldn't believe them and that they wouldn't be taken seriously on future space missions. Although we don't have a concrete answer for what the sounds could be, theory goes that the noises were a result of radio interference, whereas others believe it was some sort of message from aliens. Or maybe it was aliens blasting their music, just having a party on one of the planets, and then we rudely interrupted them. Coming in at number 2, we have the Space Shuttle Columbia.
Just taking a few hits here. We're right up on top of the tail. Not too bad.
Max flight.
Flight max.
And there's no commonality between all these tire pressure instrumentations and the hydraulic return instrumentations.
No, sir. That's...
On February 1st, 2003, the Columbia Space Shuttle was destroyed upon re-entering Earth's atmosphere. All 7 individuals on board sadly lost their lives. The signals and messages they sent to mission control while this was happening was horrifying. NASA released the transcript as well as some of the final messages of the astronauts, and just hearing it is heartbreaking. Basically, mission control started noticing a bunch of things going wrong with the craft. The individuals on board tried to stay calm and think positively, but they just kept getting worse and worse news from mission control.
ACOM.
I've got 4 temperature sensors on the bond line data that are off scale low.
Columbia out of communications at present with mission control as it continues its course toward Florida.
I didn't expect this bad of a hit on comm.
The saddest part was towards the end of the recording, they keep sending messages to the space shuttle, but all they hear is silence. That's when entry flight director Leroy Kane says, "Lock the doors."
Flight GC, lock the doors. Copy.
This means nobody leaves mission control until everyone finishes their reports and written accounts of what they just witnessed. They knew that this was the end of the crew and the mission. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Cassini spacecraft. Back in 2004, the Cassini spacecraft went into orbit around Saturn. It was on a mission to study Saturn's rings and moons, you name it. But while out there, it picked up some creepy emissions. They then altered the emissions so that they could be heard by the human ear, and what they captured is quite eerie. The sound was pretty much constant, like it gets louder at some points, but I'm sure you all heard that weird split second of a different noise. I have no clue what on earth that was, and maybe I don't ever want to even know. Starting off this countdown, we have the space roar. In 2006, NASA detected the loudest sound in the universe. They decided to give it the name the space roar, and it's pretty fitting. So basically, back then, scientists started looking for signals in the universe. They did this by sending a complex instrument to space that would pick up radio waves from the heat of distant stars. Little did they know what it was going to pick up. This instrument ended up detecting a signal that was 6 times louder than anyone ever expected. And scientists still don't know what's causing it. It's way too loud to be from an early star and far greater than anything they have ever recorded thus far. So they are baffled. Where is this loud signal coming from and who's sending it? In our 9th spot, we have the neutron star. In September of 2016, astronomers observed something that they had never seen before. They saw a long stream of infrared light coming from a neutron star 800 light years away. Now, neutron stars normally emit radio waves or higher energy radiation. Signals from neutron stars have been observed before, but they have never seen infrared light coming from one. On top of it, this light spread across a large stretch of space, which was also unusual. To this day, no explanation for this signal has ever been produced. In our 8th spot today, we have the Jupiter waves. The recording I'm about to share with you was recorded by NASA's Juno spacecraft as it was observing the plasma wave signals from Jupiter's ionosphere. And turns out, Jupiter sounds creepy as hell. Take a listen. plasma waves, okay? That's the sound of alien life forms screaming for help. And guess what? NASA is still investigating these sounds because they also found them to be quite weird and spooky as hell. So they're trying to find out the exact source of these sounds. Because maybe they believe it's coming from aliens too, or something like that. Moving on at number 7, we have the face on Mars. Now, if you're into space, then chances are you have already seen this terrifying photo of what appears to be a humanoid face on Mars. It honestly gives me the creeps. So in 1976, NASA Viking 1 orbiter flew by Mars and captured this eerie looking thing on Mars' surface. People were automatically freaked out because it looks like it has 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Rumors began to fly that this was a signal from aliens. That, or this was an alien-built monument on Mars. Or it was their way of trying to communicate with others like us. Maybe this face is of someone the aliens worship. Who knows? An alien god, maybe? Maybe. Or is it just something that naturally formed on Mars due to erosion and all that? You decide what you want to believe. Coming in at number 6, we have the Morse code. Here's another message that was apparently sent by aliens. So in 2016, NASA's Mars orbiter took some photos of Mars when it flew by. Well, it managed to capture what looked like Morse code. On Mars, there were a series of raised dark dunes that looked like lines and dashes of Morse code. Unfortunately, it looks like alien Morse code is different than ours because it spelt out gibberish. Unless it's not gibberish and that's an alien language that we don't speak. Maybe they don't speak English. The only complete English word was C, and not like S-E-A, but C, which is kind of creepy. Like, what do they want us to see? We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the surface of Mars. This recording was captured by InSight's robotic arm as its camera was scanning the surface of Mars on March 6, 2019. It literally sounds like a scuba diver breathing underwater. At other points, it almost sounds like a man coughing. I don't know about you, but I do not enjoy listening to that. It sounds hella creepy. I don't know what's going on with Mars, but I don't like the sound of that. Moving on to number 4, we have more creepy sounds from Mars. This was recorded by NASA's InSight lander on November 26, 2018. And it managed to record the first ever sounds of Martian winds on Mars. Sounds like the aliens on Mars are just having fun, or they're taking a bongo class or something like that. Or they're playing Plinko, you know that game with the... Now, at one point in the recording, these clanking sounds started to speed up. They would happen more frequently and faster, and they got louder. As for what's causing this sound, some say it's some sort of signal sent by aliens. Of course, it's aliens, like everything else on this list. But in fact, the clanking might be Morse code, or some other kind of code that we have yet to figure out. Moving on at number 3, we have the bright light. When I say that something sus is happening on Mars, something sus is happening on Mars. Back in 2014, NASA's Curiosity rover took a number of photos on Mars. In one of the photos, you could see a beam of light shooting up from Mars's horizon. A number of UFO believers believe that this is evidence of alien activity. Like they're sending that beam as a signal to us. They're like, hey, we're over here. NASA scientist Doug Ellison said that the light was caused by a cosmic ray hit, which is, terrifying on its own. It was so powerful, it caused high energy particles to fly through space. I personally just like the alien theory better. Moving on to number 2, we have the bizarre star. And I'm so happy that I came up with that because it rhymed and it's very satisfying. Bizarre star. A couple of years ago, astronomer Tabitha Boyajian and her colleagues saw a weird star that left them all perplexed. They named the star KIC 84C285, what a name. But they gave it the nickname Tabby's star. Now this star was bizarre because the star would dip in brightness. Now there wasn't a pattern to it. It would happen at irregular intervals and for odd lengths of time. For example, it would be shining bright and then all of a sudden it would dip in brightness. So people don't know what's causing this flux in brightness, which is why it was also given the name the WTF star, standing for where's the flux? Not what you thought it was gonna be, was it? Anyways, they don't know why this is happening to this star. They thought, okay, maybe a planet in orbit is blocking it. But it can't be a planet because no planet is large enough to block that much light from its star. So like, WTF is it? Like for real. Some believe that this is a signal sent by aliens. Are we surprised? No. Anything unexplainable that happens in space is blamed on aliens. And in our number one spot today, we have the Oumuamua object. It's a really fun name to say also. In 2017, a man from Hawaii discovered a weird object flying by in our solar system. This object, however, was different than any other object that we have ever seen before. This thing looked like a space rock, but it's not a comet or an asteroid. It's too small and oddly shaped to be an asteroid. This thing is too long and it's shaped like a rocket. No asteroids that we know of are shaped like that. On top of that, it was 10 times long as it was wide. In fact, it is the most elongated known space object. Before the Oumuamua, the most elongated space object was 3 times longer than they were wide. This object beat it by miles. Not only that, but astronomers were shocked by the condition of it. Astronomers thought the first space rock to enter our solar system would be a ball of ice and rocks, aka a comet. But there's usually a cloud of dust and gas surrounding comets, and this object doesn't have that. So then, what is this? On top of that, it's said to emit blue colors from it. So rumor has it that this thing is an alien spacecraft, or it was sent into our solar system from aliens, and that's why it's unlike anything we have ever seen before. In fact, Harvard professor Avi Loeb said, and I quote, "Oumuamua wasn't a natural occurrence, but a bit of space junk sent to us by aliens from another galaxy." This could mean that aliens are really out there somewhere.